2025. It's 9:30, and I'd like to call this meeting to order. First, I'd like to do the land acknowledgement to say that we are living, working, and playing on the unceded lands of the Sechelt and Squamish nations. We have an agenda in front of us, and I'd ask if there's any additions, subtractions, or multiplications to this agenda. I don't see any, so I'm looking to my directors to adopt it. I have a motion, I have a seconder. All in favor? Very good. All right, now we'll move on to presentations and delegations. I have Manager Shea here. Would you like to introduce item 3.1 on our agenda?
Thank you, Chair. I'll introduce the report as well. This report is seeking board direction on the adoption of the corporate fleet strategy as a planning and decision-making framework. This strategy represents the first comprehensive review of FCRD's fleet assets, governance model, and operational practices. Today's session will summarize the key findings and recommendations of the corporate fleet strategy, and these have been categorized into 3 interdependent work streams in the staff report. So the first is centralization, the second is a fleet management system, and the third is fleet replacement planning and decarbonization. Should the board opt to adopt the fleet strategy, staff can develop a phased implementation plan that includes the considerations outlined in the report. At this point, I'll pass it over to my colleague, Ahmed, to introduce the delegation. Thank you.
Thank you, Ralph. Good morning, Chair, and good morning, members of the board. As you are aware, to support this important initiative, SCRD engaged Deloitte Canada to conduct a corporate fleet strategy review. Deloitte consulting team has extensive experience working with local governments across Canada in the areas of fleet optimization, lifestyle asset management, and sustainable vehicle transition strategies. I'm also very happy to share that their team, which played a very crucial role in study, analysis, and development of the report, is joining us via Teams. They will provide a brief PowerPoint presentation summarizing the project objectives, methodology, key findings, and recommended next steps, followed by time for the questions and discussion from the board. I would invite Roger Smith to start their presentation by introducing this team. Roger.
Thank you, Manager Kidwell. Go ahead, Mr. Smith.
Thank you. Thanks for the nice introduction, Ahmad. And I'm happy to be here this morning. I'd like to share my screen, but I don't see an option for doing that. Could I be given the privilege to share my presentation? Okay, there it is. Sorry, I'll just take a moment here to get organized.
Thank you. We've got it shared now.
Okay. Great. Okay. So I'll just start out. I have a 10-minute slot here, and I'll go through things rather quickly. But through the process of competitive bidding in June 2024, FCRD engaged my organization, Deloitte Canada, to develop the corporate fleet strategy and provide recommendations for its fleet assets, excluding transit. The fleet, we noted immediately, and it was pointed out by SCRD's management, that the fleet accounts for about 35% of corporate greenhouse gas emissions. But SCRD also sought to transition to zero-emission vehicles and enhance operational efficiency through this corporate fleet strategy. It was also pointed out that the strategy was a long time coming and has been, the SCRD has had an interest in having a strategy completed for quite some time. We noted that 50 of the 83 vehicles in the fleet, and there's a profile of the fleet shown in the table at the right side of the screen.
Mr. Smith, if I can interrupt you real quick, you're not in presentation mode on your slideshow, at least not on our screen here.
Oh,
It's just
okay.
showing the editor.
Okay, I'm just going to stop my share, which is not working properly, and restart it. Do we have success?
We're still at the same place.
Turn your microphone on for a second.
Chair, if I may, we do have a copy of the presentation that we could probably share internally, and then the delegation could just tell us when to go to the next screen, if that would be helpful.
Thank you, GM. Mr. Smith, we're going to share from our side, and you can direct the staff to switch to the next screen as you wish.
Okay. So I'm on slide 1 right now, or slide 2, I should say. So the final bullet on the slide that I'm looking at is that our analysis and our study confirmed that SCRD's objectives that were set out in the RFP can be achieved by following the recommendations detailed in our report. Next slide. Sorry, I'm unable to see when you change slides.
Maybe I'll mention when I change the slide. We're at slide 3 right now, project objectives.
Okay, so the objectives were very broad reaching, but at the highest level it was to develop a forward-thinking corporate fleet strategy that would support the SCRD's organizational goals, enhance operational efficiency, and ensure regulatory compliance. The top level objectives are shown in the bullets below: management structures and systems, fleet effectiveness, safety and regulatory compliance, financial performance, and electrification. Next slide. Our Deloitte team decided that a comprehensive project approach was necessary. There were 5 basic steps of our approach. We started with a management and operating practices review. The purpose of this is to help us become familiar with the processes, business processes and practices at SCRD, who does what, when, why, where, and how. And from that, our objective was to identify any gaps or redundancies or duplication of effort, that sort of thing. We know that all projects need stakeholder engagement and buy-in from the drivers and the users of the fleet's vehicles. So that involved a gathering of insights from all user groups to understand their concerns, any suggestions they may have for improvement, and any potential barriers from their perspective. The third was using the data provided by SCRD, conduct a baseline analysis in our Fleet Analytics Review Accelerator software tool in order to calculate the current day baseline so we can understand the current state thoroughly, including fuel consumption, costs, usage, availability, utilization, preventive maintenance, reactive repair costs, greenhouse gas emissions, and several other indicators. From there, we conducted a life cycle analysis study. The purpose of that study is to determine the optimal economic replacement life cycles of the fleet of vehicles, how often vehicles should be replaced to derive maximum benefit from each asset. With all of that preliminary work completed, we then into predictive scenario modeling. Our accelerator tool allows us to start with the baseline and then model different what-if scenarios to evaluate the potential effects. What if the fleet was aged longer? What if it was younger? What if it was using different fuel types? What if it was using different vehicle types? And so on and so forth. We can model anything in the tool to predict the outcomes, what would happen if these changes were implemented. Next slide, please, Raf. the question becomes, why is strategic fleet management important? I'm a fleet expert, so I'm a little bit biased, but in my opinion, and I think most people's opinion, municipal fleets are absolutely essential for civil and emergency services, infrastructure maintenance, and almost every other municipal task is based on a vehicle. We think vehicles are as important as facilities and IT systems. Effective fleet management is essential for optimizing costs, controlling costs, optimizing operations, ensuring safety, compliance, and driving business success. Fleet management's job is to provide the maximum amount of vehicle uptime to ensure that drivers are provided safe and efficient vehicles that are suited to their job responsibilities during business hours. But doing so is a complex balancing or a juggling act where every element is interconnected and critical. Any change to one aspect impacts the entire ecosystem. On the right, there's a kind of a funny little graphic that shows someone juggling a number of trying to keep these balls up in the air. Each ball represents, one would represent capital spending and fleet modernization. The next one is average age of the fleet assets. Operating expenses is another ball. Preventive maintenance versus reactive. Fuel consumption and fleet emissions. Risk management, fleet safety rating, uptime and availability are all considerations that must be taken into consideration. An example of that is the cost of capital. Cost of capital is absolutely critical in managing a fleet, or like any asset. If capital is not invested in the fleet, it will age. And as we all know in our personal lives, as our vehicles age, they become less reliable and they cost more to repair. And in a fleet, that's magnified many times over, in your case, 83 times over, 83 vehicle assets. So if you do not invest in capital, operating costs go up, utilization goes down, availability goes down, operating expenses rise, safety is negatively impacted sometimes, and you'll need to do more preventive maintenance to head off those reactive repairs that no one wants. And as well, more fuel is burned, causing more emissions. Next slide. So I just want to touch on or highlight some of the key observations on SCRD's fleet. The first one, I think, is the most significant. The fleet has aged excessively. The average age of the fleet is far beyond industry benchmarks and the optimal economic thresholds. The result of that is that a very high amount of capital would be required to modernize the fleet and replace the vehicles that are over the current replacement target threshold for age of replacement. And as I described before with that juggler, fleet aging results in excessive operating costs, reduced safety and availability, and the resultant loss of productivity. In the terms of a fleet vehicle, when a fleet vehicle can't get out the yard in the morning, it's not just the one driver. That one vehicle might be tied to a crew of people, or crews of people that are unable to start their work that day because the vehicle broke down. And there's a loss of productivity related with that, which has a cost impact, which is something we take into consideration in our analysis. We think that a structured and phased approach to fleet modernization, as presented by our report, would provide SCRD with an opportunity to moderate capital costs for fleet replacement each year, while also at the same time simultaneously reducing operating costs and increasing uptime. Next slide, please. I'll just continue the observations on this slide. I won't read them all off in the interest of time, but the first one that was significant and stood out to us is that the fleet management structure is currently decentralized. Decentralized in the context that individual user groups and user departments are responsible for their own fleet assets and for operational needs. They also look after their own maintenance. They look after their own vehicle specifications when their vehicles are due for replacement. It's a very decentralized approach. Going to the next slide, please. The other one that I touched on already is the fact that the fleet has aged excessively. It's at least 2 or 3 times the average benchmarks for similar fleets across Canada. There's a very large amount of capital required to replace the vehicles that are over the current 8-year threshold. And I mentioned an 8-year threshold, which is the fleet management's target for replacement right now. However, that threshold has been exceeded several times over. In some cases, 2 and 3 times over. Even though 8 years is the ideal or the goal, it's not being observed, and the fleet is quite old. Of course, as I touched on a few times already, aging results in excessive operating costs, reduced safety and availability, and the loss of productivity. So what we think is that a structured and phased approach to modernization presented by our report will provide SCRD with an opportunity to moderate capital costs for fleet replacement each year, also at the same time reducing operating costs. And in our report, we've presented ways of bringing the capital budget line down where it's more flatlined going forward instead of having capital budget spikes in years ahead. But we've presented ways of moderating the capital line so it can be modernized and become more efficient organically in doing that. So, sorry, next slide, please. The next thing I wanted to touch on in terms of high priority recommendations is that data is very difficult to get. Fleet management took considerable effort and time to put together the data that we needed to perform our baseline analysis in order to do go forward analysis. It was, I understand, painful to gather the data. There are many, many sources of data, and they had to be all accumulated and put together into one data input form that was provided to us to complete the analysis. But data is especially critical in fleet management. Fleets are rich in data that can be used to determine the current state and from the current state determine a path forward for improvement. Without data, as it's been said, without data, you're just somebody with an opinion. But we think that a fleet management information system that would include all vehicles in the fleet, all user departments, would be key to success in the future, so that fleet management would have at their fingertips instant data on exception units, KPIs, where they are at in terms of safety, maintenance, and vehicle histories. Everything all in one system is critical to success. We think that SCRD should continue to action fleet decarbonization strategy by replacing aging vehicles with electric vehicles and in situations where there is a return on investment. Typically, the approach is to cherry pick which vehicles get replaced with EVs, and usually they're in the sweet spot where they're not driven too much and they're driven enough to get return on investment through the reduction in fuel cost and maintenance costs. And we pointed that out in our report as well. And of course, a coordinated charging infrastructure needs to be put into place in order to charge vehicles. Telematics today have become pretty essential. That is a way of monitoring vehicle performance in real time. It's a way of getting data to make go-forward decisions on the fleet and manage KPIs that can lead to cost reduction, safety improvement. You can just about name it. But without telematics, it's very hard to put together the data that's needed to manage the fleet. A driver scorecard is an example of that, where you can use KPIs and telematics to monitor driving habits such as hard braking, excessive idling, things like that. Next slide. So through the results of our analysis and our study and our go-forward analysis and our predictive analysis, we concluded that that 30% emission reduction by 2030 from a 2019 baseline is entirely possible, but it would take replacing 32 light-duty vehicles by 2030 with electric vehicles. To achieve a 45% emission reduction by 2030 would require the transition of additional gas pickup trucks and diesel trucks to achieve that target. But the 30% is entirely doable without significantly exceeding the capital replacement thresholds in terms of capital budgeting. And of course, the operating budget will be reduced commensurately with the new vehicles coming in, which electric vehicles in this case do not require They only require a fraction of the maintenance that a gas-powered vehicle does. So the target is entirely possible in terms of achievement, and we are looking at 11 gas-powered SUVs would become battery electric SUVs, 2 hybrid SUVs would become battery electric, and 19 gas engine pickups would become battery electric pickups. Next slide.
Well, thank you for this presentation. I know there's a few questions that we have. I'd like to kick it off with a question.
Did staff want to introduce their report first?
Oh, did staff want to introduce your report first? You'd rather not? Okay, very good. My question is, you've talked about the fact that our fleet is aging above the norm here on the Sunshine Coast. Now, when you say that, do you mean that we are that we're keeping vehicles longer on the road so the vehicles are older, or are they getting older faster than normal?
The average age of the FCRD fleet is 2 or 3 times the age, about 65% older than typical Canadian fleets. They are aging like any other asset, and aging can be a good thing to a point where repair costs and unplanned repair costs exceed the cost of ownership of a new vehicle.
So, we've got older buses than most jurisdictions, and it's not, our buses aren't getting older faster because we're a seaside community.
No, it's just, their actual chronological age.
I'm going to turn to my directors, Director McMahon. I'm going to ask for hands, physical hands. Thank you.
That was going to be my first question, whether we were doing physical or virtual hands. I noted on page 154 of this agenda package that 43 of our 83 vehicles are underutilized. So my question is, do we have the right number of vehicles?
And that's a very good question. That is an alarming statistic. Now, I just want to qualify that. That statistic is based on kilometers traveled. Kilometers traveled in a municipal vehicle is not always a good indicator of utilization. For example, a vehicle might only travel 1 kilometer and go to a job site and spend the whole day there working, and then it was used to transport tools and materials, and another kilometer to get back to the base at the end of the day. And a vehicle that's used in that type of application would not accumulate many kilometers, but it's still valuable to your community or to your municipality. So it's a very challenging way of measuring utilization and very contestable. An ideal way to measure utilization would be through hours charged to the vehicle for actual utilization. So applying vehicle time charged out on a work order for a capital project or an operating project, which should be a better indicator. But in the absence of that, the only thing we had to measure by was kilometers driven. Now, kilometers driven, like I said, is not necessarily meaningful in the municipal world. However, we think it can be a yellow flag or a red flag to a vehicle that is not getting utilized properly. We measured your utilization against 24 other Canadian fleets that are under 80,000 in population and roughly the same service area. And your fleet size, your utilization rate was about 1/3 of your peers. So to me, that's a red flag that there are too many vehicles. But again, that's a very difficult thing for fleet management to determine. That decision-making needs to rest in the hands of the user groups. Can they validate the use of a vehicle even though it's only traveling a couple thousand kilometers every year?
All right, thank you. Hope that answers your question. Very good, but I'm going to go to Director Stanford.
Thank you, Chair. I'm wondering if there was any consideration of looking to our partner municipalities and how they use their vehicles, and if there was any options for co-ownership and use across the region that way?
It occurred to us that there would be an opportunity or potential opportunity, but we don't geographically, I don't really see that it's feasible. Municipal vehicles are very customized, and each one is unique in terms of the equipment they have and the gear they carry, specialized gear. I've seen that attempted in other municipalities, but I've never seen it successful for that reason.
Thank you. Any other questions? Director McMahon, go ahead. I have a question as well.
Sure, lots of questions. So in addition to the 83 units that you counted, we also have transit buses, and we also have specialized vehicles like forklifts and Zambonis and the piston bully. So actually, how many vehicles do we have? Do we know?
This work was based on-road vehicles because those are, those are vehicles that you can monitor through kilometer readings and engine hour readings. To get into Zambonis and forklifts and off-road equipment is a whole other endeavor, and it requires data that just wasn't available.
Thank you. Sorry, I'm looking to the other directors. Director McMahon, you have another question? I have a question. So one of the things that has happened recently here on the Sunshine Coast is that BC Ferries has now implemented a policy that they refuse to move damaged electric vehicles. And I'm wondering if that is taken into consideration in any of our fleet management. I don't know how easily an electric battery can be removed from an existing vehicle for repair here on the Sunshine Coast, or whether there's any facility for any kind of electrical battery repair. It's a whole different ball of wax that when we bring a functioning electric vehicle to the Sunshine Coast, and if it becomes a non-functioning electric vehicle, now we can't remove it from the Sunshine Coast. And so I wonder if that's been considered in any of your studies.
Well, it's not something that we've considered, but certainly it's something that needs to be thought about, of course. An electric vehicle, there's a lot of overreaction to the issue around lithium-ion batteries catching fire, and certainly there is valid concern that they don't just self-ignite. I mean, the same concern applies to gaseous fuels like propane. Propane is banned from most underground parking lots, and I think some ferries require that the propane valve be shut off before you board a ferry. Gasoline is more explosive. So, every type of vehicle, there is some sort of risk. I think there's been a lot of overreaction in terms of electric vehicles. The likelihood of needing to transport one by ferry for repairs or maintenance, I think it's pretty slim, but certainly the need could arise.
All right, thank you. I think maybe you should lobby the BC Ferries.
Our job.
Sorry. Director White, would you like to say something?
Well, we shouldn't ask a consultant to lobby BC Ferries. That's our role. Let's be clear about that. And on that, it hasn't been on heavy on my advocacy agenda yet, but I have had some conversations with the MLA's constituency assistant for West Vancouver, because it's been a big Bowen Island issue. A lot of Bowen Island, and the reason I had a conversation with him was it was at a our MP Patrick Weiler's, it was some kind of barbecue or something, and since he covers Bowen Island too, the constituency assistant for our neighboring area was there, and he said it's been a big issue for Bowen Islanders, and they're actively advocating to BC Ferries about it, and he's collected a lot of interesting information about it, and then it's something I intend to follow up on because it's a concern to a lot of Sunshine Coast people too. So I think we can share that, and it does seem kind of like an overreaction, and I don't think it's something that's reasonable to consider as this is going to be the permanent policy of BC Ferries, because it's a little it's not very forward thinking, and it just needs to be solved somehow.
Thank you, Director.
I mean, the world is moving into electric. Canada has an electrification mandate by 2035, which is unchanged, to my knowledge, to this day. So, by 2035, every vehicle on the light duty side will become electric. So there are lots of groups looking at their concerns, and the whole issue of fires, I think, has been overinflated, but that's my personal opinion.
Director Toth.
Just as a follow-up comment to the electric vehicles and transport on the ferry, I mean, if you look around in our fleet parking lots, I'd say the overwhelming majority of the vehicles that the fleet consists of are domestic. Like, they were bought through dealerships here on the Sunshine Coast. They're serviced through dealerships here on the Sunshine Coast if our crew can't service them. Mm-hmm. And so I think the number of times that we would need to transport one of our vehicles off coast for servicing, I think would be vanishingly small. And it might even be something that factors into future procurement if the vehicles can't be maintained on the Sunshine Coast. So just a couple of comments. Thanks, Chair.
Well, thank you. Director McMahon.
Yes, one thing I didn't see in the report was actually just a list of our vehicles by which departments have them, because I did kind of glean stuff. I mean, I got it that utilities has a lot of vehicles, and we understand that fire departments have vehicles, but I was a little surprised at some of the departments that have vehicles that I wouldn't immediately have thought of. And I was just, as a curiosity piece, I would be interested in knowing that. In terms of a strategy going forward, we're not, how is this fitting? I noticed there are vehicle replacements in the budget package coming forward. So how are we managing this? And are we looking at efficiencies when we were looking at the fleet in terms of how much windscreen time our staff spend driving around, and whether not only do we have the right vehicles, but are they in the right places? And are there some better places to stage vehicles?
Thank you, Director McMahon. That kind of dovetails with our parks management talk. Yes. Staff?
Thank you, Chair. So the first part of the question, the insights that were developed through an extensive data gathering exercise and analysis from our consultants here did help inform the recommendations for vehicle replacements in Budget 2026 that will be coming forward. And those insights will inform future iterations as well. With regards to optimizing vehicle use, that's part of the proposal here, is that it's something that could be evaluated further with greater detail if there's some kind of prioritization of doing so.
Yeah, I think the thing of it is, it's it's a delicate thing. User departments obviously are acting in the best interests of the municipality they work for, and they realize that they need vehicles, and we call it the just-in-case fleet. They like to have some backup vehicles just in case something goes wrong. But unfortunately, those are stranded assets. If they aren't getting utilized, they still have operating costs that weigh down your budgets. So the way I've always approached that is that it should be a top-down driven objective or mandate for user departments that have vehicles assigned to them to review the vehicles they have, particularly those 46 units are identified or flagged as having very low utilization. I think that user department managers should be required to maybe annually or several times a year perhaps, look at the vehicles assigned to them and decide, do we really need this asset? Is it really serving its purpose? Vehicles are expensive. Is there a way of doing the job without a vehicle? Or using the employee's vehicle, paying the mileage, or just having a part-time rental vehicle whenever we need it, that type of thing, or sharing with another department. But it should be, the onus, I think, should be on the user group managers to look at their complement of vehicles and decide whether they really need them or not. In very specific vehicles that have very specific tasks, like cranes or backhoes, very highly focused vehicles, dump trucks, things like that. Obviously, it's pretty hard to get a substitute, and you can't get a short-term rental if you want one for a half a day or something like that. So there are exceptions, but for vehicles that are just primarily used for transportation, I think the onus should be on the user managers to review what they were paying for, what they've got, and what's assigned to them, and decide if they really need them or not.
Thank you. I'm looking around the table. I don't see, Director Gebias, go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. And just for clarification, we're on to the report right now, correct? Okay, perfect. Yes, thank you for the presentation and thank you for the this incredibly thorough fleet strategy. Really important to receive that information now. I think having a strategy obviously allows us to be proactive and not reactive, and so will lead to better decisions in the long run. And it will also give us, that information gives us more context for the budget proposal coming on at budget on resourcing for this fleet strategy. So I'm in agreement with the 3 recommendations that staff presented. So I would like to move them. They are on page 14. And I have a question once that's seconded. Yeah, okay. So moved.
We have a seconder. Very good. Okay, so we've got motions on the floor. You have a...
Yeah, so for the phased implementation plan, when can we expect to see, what's the timeline for that? When will we see that implementation plan back at the board?
Do we have a timeline on the adoption of, or the presentation of a phased implementation plan? I believe staff may have an answer for this. Go ahead. Go ahead, Manager Shea.
Thank you, Chair. The implementation plan will vary depending on the relative priority that we collectively set on this and the resourcing that we allocate to this. So staff have done some initial work outlining different scenarios that could perhaps help with informing the budget deliberations.
I have a question about this third point in the recommendations, the phased implementation plan. The second point says that the corporate fleet strategy would be used as a planning and decision-making framework. And how does the implementation plan differ from using the existing plan as a planning and decision-making framework? It just seems a bit superfluous to me.
Thank you for the question, Chair. The corporate fleet strategy is an extensive document that represents a really deep dive into our operations, into our assets, and presents a really detailed picture of what a best-in-class fleet would look like. The implementation, there's a section on recommendations there on what steps we can take to achieve that. But in terms of implementing a fleet management system, for example, there's a lot of details in terms of who would be responsible for developing the needs assessment and the integration with other softwares, and some organizational structure questions around ownership and maintenance. So each one of these recommendations we can tease out in greater detail and eventually incorporate into a corporate work plan.
Thank you. So if I understand it correctly, you're going to take what the consultant has given us and you're going to boil it down for use by our staff in order for them to do the work. So any idea how long that's going to take? Sorry. Go ahead, Jam.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for the question. So the purpose of today is to really present the strategy. We've never had a document like this before to help guide our operations. We have some challenges. They're clearly outlined in the project, and that's the decentralization and the fact that we have lots of people doing lots of different things. So that will be the next task, is we have to determine what we can do with existing resources. Are there recommendations that we want to bring forward that might help guide this or bring it forward faster? So that's part of the next step. The first step is getting it in front of you, outlining what is possible, and then the next step is identifying what we can do. So I think the board can expect to see future reports. Thank you.
All right. Go ahead, Director McMahon.
One more curiosity question. Will EVs have a longer lifespan? Do we anticipate that could be the case? I know that in some car share fleets, hybrids are really popular. The Prius in particular just keeps going and going and going, to my surprise. So might we look at more longevity in some of our new vehicles?
Absolutely. There have been numerous studies that have asked that same question. Electric vehicles will decidedly outlast the battery, and electrical components will, by a wide margin, outlast the vehicles that they reside in. So that's going to require very careful preventive maintenance going forward, preventing corrosion and keeping the car or the vehicle itself in good condition, because the battery will outlast the vehicle.
Very good. We have go ahead.
Oh, sorry, I was just going to continue that. The future state or the future vision is that because batteries outlast vehicles, the future vision is to take used EV batteries and store them and house them so they can be used to store energy from solar and from wind. That's the future state.
Very good. Thank you. We have a motion on the floor. I'm going to call the question. All in favor? Any opposed? None? Okay. I'm going to wrap this section up. I'm going to thank Mr. Smith and staff for your presentation.
Thank
very
you.
informative. I'm going to ask for a motion to accept all reports. I forgot to do that earlier. Very good. All in favor? Very good. Okay, that's done. And now I'm going to call for a short recess. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. If anybody has any direct questions, they can contact me directly. I'll be glad to answer them.
That's great. Thank you very much for your
Welcome back to the Committee of the Whole meeting for October 23rd, 2025. And we're going to move on to our next item on the agenda, which is item 4.1, the feasibility study, long-term solid waste disposal options. And I have GM Rosenboom and Director Soul here in front of me. Would you gentlemen like to introduce this item for us? Thank you.
Sorry, just waiting for the presentation to come up on the screen there.
I hope everyone's patient. There we go. We're back, but we're waiting for a screen share.
Technical challenges.
We have a lot of technical challenges this morning.
We're just setting up Plan B, which is joining through Zoom.
Sherry, this is to make up for last week when you said that it ran so perfectly.
Well, thank you, GM Rosenboom. You've worked around the issue. Go right ahead.
There we go. So thank you. So staff today have just put together a couple of slides here to help introduce this report and set some context for the community on the decision that's in front of the board today. So as the community and the committee may be aware, we're currently updating our solid waste management plan. And as part of that plan update process, we do need to include a long-term disposal option. We need to include in the plan where we're sending our garbage. And because the landfill will fill up in 2030, which is only 5 years into our 10-year plan, we need to figure out what we're doing for the full 10-year term of the solid waste management plan. And so in order to do that, we need a decision on long-term disposal to include in the draft solid waste management plan so that we can engage the community on the plan in its entirety and finalize and submit to the province. Once the solid waste management plan is approved by the province, it enables long-term borrowing for any included capital expenditures. So just touching quickly on some of the efforts the SCRD has been working on this topic. Going back to 2020, the regional district has been looking at siting a new landfill, as well as waste to energy. And both of these have been deemed not feasible due to cost and time. We also did an initial study on waste export, which was deemed feasible, but obviously highly costly. What came out of that study was an amendment to our previous solid waste management plan, the 2011 plan, to include waste export as a Plan B in case the Seashell landfill reaches capacity before we have an alternative in place. Coming to the more recent studies now, which is stuff that began in 2024 and just wrapped up now in 2025, we explored vertical expansion of the Seashell landfill and further feasibility assessment on waste export. What was determined is that both options are technically feasible. However, both will require 5 years to develop. And this is key in that there is an assumption that there are no delays during decision-making, design, permitting, and construction. I think it's quite likely that delays can be expected in any massive construction project, and so this is a very optimistic timeline here, which is to say that time is of the essence with either of the options. So looking at waste export quickly here, for the purposes of the study, we assumed that we would use SCRD-owned land in the Hillside Industrial Park. However, the exact siting and acquisition of land for any waste export transfer station would still need to be confirmed if we move down that path. There are major changes that would be required to the waste system on the coast. And the feasibility study looked at the challenges of shipping to the United States, given the current political climate, and has assumed that we would be trucking to Cache Creek. However, obviously, we would need to confirm the ultimate disposal location if we were to move onto this path. So there are a number of risks with this option, one of which is during construction, where there's a lot of extra permitting required, and that adds to the complexity of the project and the risk that during one of those permitting processes it could shut down development. There's also less financial control over the transport and the disposal costs. There are risks due to transportation disruptions, weather, strikes, etc., and there are significantly more greenhouse gas emissions. Moving on to vertical expansion. So this option would use the existing seashell landfill site, which means no changes to our waste system. People don't need to worry about where they bring certain things now. It all remains the same. It's effectively a 10-meter high wall, which allows us to place more waste on top of our existing waste material, including on the closed portion of the landfill, which will act as a semi-liner. The vertical expansion option could provide upwards of 30 years of landfill life. However, there's the potential for significantly more life if we were to increase enforcement and education. One of the key aspects of this plan is that it does provide more time for the community to explore other alternatives that could be brought online before 2060, such as siting a new landfill or other technology that might be a potential in the coming years. There are less risks associated with vertical expansion. One of the largest risks is simply just uncertainty in sourcing the aggregate required for the wall, and that is a large cost component of the $33 million capital cost. And so that number could be brought down significantly if we are able to source cheap or free aggregate material. This option does provide greater financial control and has less risks as well as less greenhouse gas emissions than waste export. So, and this is just a comparison of the options financially speaking. You can see our current system cost, if we include all of our expenses and all of the revenue that we get back from some of our diversion programs, we're around $326 per ton. Vertical expansion is a little more than $100 above this per ton, but you can see waste export is significantly more expensive. And I've included on here waste export unplanned, which is effectively what would occur if there were any delays to either vertical expansion or the waste export transfer station option. This number is a very rough estimate, but we could expect costs to be significantly higher than current if we were forced to export waste without a plan and without a transfer station in place to consolidate and bulk material. As such, staff are recommending vertical expansion of the Seashell landfill due to less risks, lower operating costs, and lower greenhouse gas emissions as well. So I want to stress that a decision today enables engagement with the community and progress onto the design phase, which will provide further technical information on this option before an ultimate decision point on borrowing for construction, which we estimate to occur in 2028. So all to say, there are many more decision points ahead and things to be determined. Just touching on some of the engagement that we've done to date on this option. In terms of the solid waste management plan, we've had several meetings that were specific to local governments and First Nations. The draft solid waste management plan, should the board make a decision on a long-term disposal option, will be referred to First Nations and other local governments, neighboring regional districts as part of the engagement process. Speaking to vertical expansion specifically, staff have had several meetings with Shishel Nation going back to 2023 to share the status, seek input, and to clarify the project and the process. We have also offered support to Nation staff in engaging with Shishel Nation Chief and Council. If vertical expansion is advanced, there will obviously be further engagement with the Nation and Heidelberg, our neighbor, regarding the technical aspects to be considered as part of the design phase. Touching on waste export, we have engaged with the Squamish Nation as well, and they have indicated that they wish to be kept apprised on the status of that option should the board decide to move forward with it. And staff are happy to answer any questions the committee might have.
Thank you very much, Manager Soul. I see hands up. I'm going to go to Director White, followed by Director Paul.
Yeah, I missed the workshop. Unfortunately, I was away. So I want to ask a question that was interesting to me just reading the materials, and I know everyone had a chance to learn more about it at the workshop, but I think especially for the public to understand too, I have to admit I haven't given a lot of thought in the past to what it takes to do waste export. So it was kind of eye-opening to me to see the infrastructure needs for this. It's kind of, I probably just had the simplistic version of a truck brings down containers full of garbage and you put them on a barge down at City Transfer or something and away they go. But could you enlighten us a little bit more, particularly in this public meeting for others to hear as well about why there is so much more infrastructure and investment required to do so?
Go ahead, Manager Soul.
Yeah, thank you. So one of the challenges with exporting waste is obviously the transport of that waste. And currently, if you think about our current facilities, what happens is the public throws their garbage into a large 40-yard roll-off bin. And that material is then either trucked to Seashell landfill from Pender or brought up and buried at Seashell. And in that bin, it's uncompacted, there's a lot of air in there. And so it's not the cost to move that air around is not a big factor. But when you look at waste export, we're trucking much longer distances and the costs are much higher because we've got barging as well, potential ferry costs too. And so we want to make sure that we're transporting as little air as possible because we're going to be paying a considerable amount of money to move that air. And so we need a facility where the waste is essentially tipped onto a floor as proposed in the feasibility study, and that waste is driven over, compacted, squished around a bit. It then gets loaded onto a larger container, an 80-yard container, which allows more efficient trucking. And then that container is barged. It has the possibility of being put on a train if we were to ship to the States, or it can be trucked to Cache Creek. So we need a place to effectively bulk and consolidate that waste and load it into a larger container to minimize our shipping costs. And that has the net benefit of also trying to minimize the greenhouse gas emissions as much as possible. Because if you think of transporting an unconsolidated 40-yard bin instead of a consolidated 80-yard bin, well, you probably need 2 to 3 times as many trucks on the road to move that material. And so your cost could be 2 to 3 times higher potentially. And that's what we're getting at when we talk about an unplanned export of waste off coast, is that we would be moving 40-yard bins of waste and having to truck 2 to 3 times as much as we would under the waste export transfer station option.
Thank you for the answer. I'm going to go to Director Paul.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I just have a question on it because it seems like this report is very leading it down one way with some disruptions and stuff that are accountable to export, but not the same thing, like road disruptions, strikes and stuff like that were part of it. But those are true here. We've had, in the last couple of years, seeing the dozer operation almost double because of lack of capacity for that and lack of competition. So we see those things regardless on cost increases. So it just seems like it's trying to lead to one decision and not providing the real like third person view of it, stuff like that. And I'm just a little bit concerned with that because it also references that it doesn't need an environmental impact assessment because it's on the same footprint and stuff like that. But we have different standards from when this landfill opened to now, and you're going to start compacting it by putting 30 years more of refuse, that if we do the shredder, it's going to be even compacted even more. It's an unlined landfill, which means that those things get squished out even more and sent downhill through the community. So I'm just wondering, like, why that part's not in that. Like, we're talking about trying to be environmentally friendly and everything else with our battery operated vehicles and everything else and all those standards, but that's seeming like this report is trying to bypass that. And I don't see that. This goes out to community. We have a very big green community that question is going to be asked. So I'm just trying to figure out why that's not incorporated now before it gets passed to go forward, because it's in one area and it's going to be there for another 30 years. Contamination is estimated usually to leak out for the next 100, because we have the liability for 100 years past closure of a landfill. So I'm just trying to figure out, like, why that stuff isn't incorporated, and some of the restrictions that say don't do export because of these things, but those aren't included in it, like highway closures and transportation costs. We truck it down regardless. And going off the side road up to the dump to get it put in there, the fuel costs on a highway is cheaper because you're at more of a speed. So I'm just wondering why those things are not factored into that. Thanks.
Thank you, Director Paul. I wonder if staff has an answer to any of those questions about what's not included in this study.
Yeah, so thank you for the question. So what was looked at the feasibility studies is we're looking at additional risk with waste export. So yes, you're right that with any on-coast waste solution, you still have risks to transportation, staff strikes, etc. But with waste export, you've got these additional risks on top of that. The risks mentioned on coast are risks that we face right now. And I think one of the key differentiators between vertical expansion versus waste export is that with vertical expansion, the SCRD retains control over the decision-making around how to mitigate and address those risks. Whereas with waste export, our hands are tied in a sense. If a bridge goes out on Highway 1 due to an atmospheric river, there's nothing the SCRD can do about that. We will have to simply stockpile waste and ask the community to hold on to their garbage until the highway reopens. Whereas if there are disruptions on coast, the SCRD can at least respond to that by, say, if there is a bridge out or a transportation disruption, implementing a plan B, if you will. I don't know if there was a second part you wanted to add. Yeah.
Yeah, I'll take part of the second one. With respect to environmental impact assessment, as indicated in the report, the project would not qualify for an environmental impact assessment under Environmental Assessment Act. So it would not require an environmental certificate from the province to continue. However, it does mean that environment is not a consideration for the SRD to consider. We currently have an extensive groundwater monitoring and surface water monitoring program associated with the landfill, and of course that will continue. And as part of the design of vertical expansion, if we advance that, there are options to confirm the level of environmental protection we want to have there. Currently, leachate is being collected in our new contact water pond. It's contact water because it has been in contact with the waste material. So that is constructed up to current standards, and there are opportunities to have further conversations and discussions about the level of environmental protection we want to have as part of the design phase. But those are things that you can engineer your way out of a lot of things, and this is one of them.
Thank you for the answer. I'm going to go to Director Toth, and then
Thank you, Chair. And as it happens, it almost ends up being a follow-up to GM Rosenboom's comments there in that two questions. Where in Washington State does transported garbage actually go? Because I'm looking at Cache Creek and it's 5.5 hours away. But the question that I actually had was that staff had made a comment about the existing closed area of the landfill being almost considered a liner. And I'm wondering if they could speak a bit more to that. And is that something that is like recognized provincially within the legislation, or is that something that needs to be engineered for if we do consider expansion? Thank you.
Okay, I think I'll take one part of the question and Manager Sol will take the second part. In terms of the liner, there's currently about 1/3 of the landfill is what we considered closed, and that has a liner on top of it. Vertical expansion would allow that for all the water. So there, even if there is waste material put on top of it, any leachate would not happen, it would be collected. A option that we could explore, and that's what I was referring to, is what is what are the cost implications and technical implications of lining the remainder of the landfill for the purpose of collecting leachate. We would have to look at to see if our contact water pond is then still has sufficient capacity. But those are things that we could consider as part of the engineering phase of the project.
Thank you. Yeah, I want to see that we're not making things worse by going up. Director Inkster.
Still want to know where in Washington State the
Oh.
garbage goes.
Where in Washington State does the garbage go?
Thank you. Yeah, so there's a landfill colloquially known as Rebanco, or officially as the Roosevelt Regional Landfill. And I just plugged in the distance and direction. So it's approximately an 8-hour plus drive and 658 kilometers away. So it's a little further than Cache Creek. However, I do know that the main transportation network used to move waste down there is rail. And that would have specific loading requirements that would need to be considered in the design phase of a waste export transfer station.
Go ahead, Director Inkster.
Thanks, Chair. Rebanco. I have a Rebanco baseball cap. I'll wear it tonight. You'll love it. Rebanco, well known. I think they started up a few years ago, and it's big now. It's huge because a lot of people are shipping out their garbage. Although there's some moral questions to shipping out your garbage. Here's all our crap. Thanks for taking it. I hope your water is okay where it's accepted. I look at the page that we have the costs of the different alternatives, and that's other than the moral questions that I ask myself. I look at the costs. The issues with the change in cost from now to with the vertical expansion is a slight increase, but then there's the larger cost with the other two choices. That per ton based on over a number of years, and staff's already given a prediction of figure changes, although we don't know what the future necessarily looks like. That's a huge difference between those two costs over a number of years in terms of cost to our local citizens with this choice that they're talking about. And I think the board has also sort of alluded to and or shown their cards to, in a number of ways, to looking at a vertical expansion for a number of reasons. Costs over the last number of years, but also I think the moral questions about sending your garbage to somebody else to look at. So that page to me is really important, the cost page, Chair, and what it looks like over the next 50 to 100 years. Thanks.
If I may, there was a piece of information that they brought forward that I did not see when reading the report earlier, that the increase in the cost per ton for the vertical expansion is going to be approximately $110 per ton over what we're paying now. But if we were to ship our garbage, it would be closer to $250 per ton more. And so that combined with the hope that we do more, that we do less damage, that we don't do any more damage to our environment, I think is something that I'm looking at. You follow up?
Yeah, thanks. I also was going to mention that The point was made, although it doesn't always happen, but climate change is leading to, as was pointed out by staff, the atmospheric river that knocked out the interior connections. And that's a really important one because that time of year, us holding onto all our garbage is also the time at which our bears are loading up for winter. So that would have been an interesting, it would have been another show called The Happening a few years ago if both those things happened at the same times. Thanks.
Thank you, Director Inkster. Everyone's painting wonderful pictures this morning. Do you have, Director Gebias, go
Yes,
ahead.
thank you, Chair. If I understand correctly, staff said that there'll be, if this goes forward, there'll be opportunities to discuss and look at the environmental impacts mitigation for this project. Is that during the design? Okay, perfect. So I guess that's a good example. I would like to know should this go forward, how would our climate action plan intersect with this project? How would it be integrated? Just trying to get an idea of how we're using that plan when it comes to projects like this one.
Thank you for the question. So it's how does our climate action lens fit itself to this project?
Climate action plan.
Climate action plan lens.
Thank you. Thank you for the question, Director Chair. Any project, any capital projects that we're currently undertaking, we're looking at it from a climate action plan in terms of resilience, risks to flooding, risks to that side of drought, but also from a GHG emission perspective. And I think this is an example where I think we presented the cost as well as our potential impact on GHG emissions. Doesn't mean that we always calculate the actual tonnage for each of the options, but if that's required, we would of course do so. But in this case, I think it's very clear that there are huge differences. So yeah. So every capital project that we currently undertake, we try to make sure that it is constructed in a climate resilient manner, as well as that we're doing so in the most climate resilient way in terms of GHG emissions. And I think this is one of those options. And if we were to line more of the landfill, there might also be options to, for example, start thinking about accepting or developing a greenhouse gas emission system at the landfill, which we currently are not able to. So those are questions that the scope of the design phase and the assessments that would need to be conducted are still to be confirmed, and that would be all be part of the next phase, and options for that would be brought forward, of course, to the board at that point.
Thank you. Director Lee, I see you readying your microphone. You have a question?
Yes, thank you, Chair. Actually, a comment rather than a question. Back in 2011, perhaps even earlier, we started on a circular economy, and we are hoping to get 90% of our waste recycled, reused. And even though we're one of the more efficient ones per person, we can go do a lot more quite easily. And I would like to see that we contain our trash, our waste, our garbage in our area so we can follow up on the program, look after our own waste, continue to have incentive to get it done. I think it's all good that we do it ourselves here. I won't make a motion yet. I think I'll let the discussion continue, but you know what I'm thinking, of course.
Yeah, thank you, Director Lee. I for one, am very interested in advocating more at the producer level to try to reduce packaging and things like that. It would make our lives so much easier. Did I see Director Toth has a question?
Not a question, Chair. Thank you. But I'm right there with Director Lee. I think it's our garbage. It behooves us to deal with it here. and not make it somebody else's problem. I think, you know, one of the things that the SCRD sort of is taking leadership on is mattress recycling. When we were in Nanaimo, I got a tour of the RDN landfill, and they just bury their mattresses. And I was really surprised to hear that, but for them, they have the capacity and the economics of recycling just aren't there for them. So there are certainly things that we do that I think other jurisdictions should be jealous of. But I know that there 100%, there are things that we could be doing way better jobs of locally. And if we're going to be spending the kind of money that's being envisioned in waste export, I would rather be spending those dollars in reducing the amount of waste that we're generating. Recycling, EPR, whatever it ends up being. So those are just my own thoughts. I do have one question, which is on page 161. The table under financial considerations has interest listed twice. And I don't think we're double dipping on the interest costs, but I would like a little bit of information on the differences that are being considered in those costs. Thanks.
I'll give the staff a moment to come up with an answer for that.
Yeah, I think staff will actually have to get back to the board on that. I don't want to give a half-baked answer on where that interest is coming from. It is a complex number related to the increasing cost over time, lost revenue. So I'd rather check my notes that the consultant provided and give a well-rounded answer.
I think I just saw our CAO put on her CFO hat. Go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. So at a very high level, the top number is it is essentially the interest that we will be paying on the debt to cover the capital infrastructure requirements. So that is essentially the time value of money over the projected term, of which we'd have to come back with which term the consultants use. Is it a 20-year, 25, 30, 35? We don't know that right at this particular moment. The other line that is essentially is the landfill closure post-closure is the requirements that we have legislatively. It's now called our asset retirement obligations, and that's the money that we have when we have to close the landfill. And so part of the analysis that we need to do, and the consultant has probably taken a first step at, and again, this is part of our audit process, is that we have to fund the closure in perpetuity, and that's 100 years. And now that we're moving the needle, we have to do that analysis. So right now we're contributing somewhere in the neighborhood of $900,000 a year for that, and with an anticipated closure. And we know that we are already underfunded by essentially $5 million. And so we're going to have to recalculate. So that's on staff's work plan to continue to do that analysis. So that's the difference on the interest. And again, we can't use those reserve funds for anything but closure and post-closure.
Thank you, CFO Perot. I think that answer was fully baked. Director McMahon.
Right. You know, building a mountain of garbage is just not the legacy that maybe all of us would love to leave, but we don't seem to have much choice about it, particularly since we don't control the stream of garbage coming at us. I don't like the idea of shipping it off for many of the reasons mentioned, and I do like the idea of spending our money locally rather than in Washington State. And I have long wondered what would happen if the residents of Washington State woke up one day and said, wait, we don't want to take everybody else's garbage, we're going to legislate against it. Then some communities would be in a huge amount of trouble. So, and during the workshop, it also came out that Port Millen Highway is a very dicey stretch of roadway, and it's already loaded with, you know, big trucks and shift workers and everything else, and adding garbage to that mix doesn't sound like the best possible solution. So I'll stop there, but I think that having to deal with our own garbage locally is keep it local. That's probably not what they had in mind when they came up with that slogan, but let's keep it local.
Thank you, Director McMahon. Director Inkster, Did you have a question?
Yeah, thanks. The question about interest piqued my interest. The thing is that I'm wondering what interest rates are really low right now, and there's a number of things. I'm not sure. I think the CFO, CAO knows what we paid for the rec facilities, probably in terms of interest rate. I think it was quite a bit higher than it is now. And it's just interesting when we do all these projects, when they come online, I'm really interested in what we can get and how many years we borrow at with that. Because I know they go up with the longer term, but it's just, right now is a good time to look at some of those options because of the lower interest rates, and I think they're going to go lower, to be honest, with some of the challenges. But it's always a question I ask, because our cost of money, if we do it right, can be quite a bit lower than it would be at higher interest rates if it's done correctly. Thanks.
Thank you. Is there a question in there?
Yeah, I think staff knows that generally what the historical rates are. A lot of people don't look at that, but it's really important if you do it personally to look at what you're paying for interest. Thanks.
Thanks. I'm sure that when it comes to it, we're going to borrow the money at the time we need to borrow it, and the interest rates hopefully will be in our favor. I am looking around for any other questions or statements. I don't see any. We have a motion that is on page 1 of the staff report, page 159 of the regular agenda. And I see a mover. Do I have a seconder? I have a seconder. Okay, we have a motion on the floor. Do we have any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, I will call the question. All in favor? All opposed? We shall record Director Paul's opposition to that. Thank you. Thank you very much, staff. We're going to move on to our next item, which is Transit Improvement Plan Expansion Priorities 4.2. We're looking at page 269 on the large agenda. This is a request for decision. There are recommendations on page 269. So we have General Manager Gagnon and Manager Kidwa here to introduce this Transit Improvement Plan 2026 expansion priorities for us. Thank you. Go ahead.
Thank you, Chair and members of the board. The purpose of this report is to present the proposed 3 years improvement program priorities for the Sunshine Coast Transit System. Key initiatives include service frequency increases on route number 2, route number 90, and introduction of a new route number 5 connector in Upper and Lower Gibsons. Additional hours for custom transit to enhance weekend and weekdays coverage to meet growing community demands. These priorities are aligned with the previous board direction and will enhance the reliability, accessibility, and connectivity to both conventional and custom transit services. Staff are here to answer your question you may have. Thank you.
I'm going to look to the board and see if we have any. Oh, Director Gebias, you go right ahead.
Thank you, Chair. Just a question for clarity. If I'm reading it right, the proposed hours, extra hours for custom transit, when we saw them in July, were a little higher than what they are now. I think it was 2,500, and now we're down to 2,150. Am I reading this correctly? And if so, what were the factors that determine the number of hours that we're looking at today?
Yeah, for some clarity, I'm not sure. This is the 2026-2027 plan. We have a plan that's being implemented, 2025-2026 plan that involves the 2,500 hours of improvement. Is that where the difference lies?
Thank you for the question. Yes, that is exactly true. For January, for 2025, 2026, we are having 2,900 hours of HandyDart being implemented. And this particular report talks about 26 and 27.
Thank you, Chair. So you are correct. In earlier this year, in June and July, when we were presenting, we did have a figure of 2,500 hours. So that is in your July report. So this would have just been looking at how we take those hours and actually fit them into a route and fit them into a staff schedule. And so this would be better aligned with that. But you are correct. We have approved hours that we are looking to implement in 2026. So it's a bit confusing, but you are correct. There were more hours noted in July. Further exploration of how we can actually operationalize them creates a little bit of a reduction. Thank you.
Nice job, Director Gabias. Director Stanford, go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. Again, for a question of clarity. When we're looking at these plans, I'm always trying to keep in mind that if the provincial government does not provide equivalent funding or the MOU required funding, that none of this happens. And I think sometimes we get lost in that slight detail, because I'm always like, yay, we're going to get more, for a certain route, and we're going to do this and this, and then it gets delayed or, it doesn't happen. So I just want to be really clear that this is based on a preconceived idea that we will get funding from the provincial government, but that's not guaranteed at this point.
Go ahead, Jim.
Thank you. I thought that was a statement, which is a correct statement, but I'll confirm you are absolutely correct. This process, and the reason that it's happening now is because it allows both parties, both BC Transit and the SCRD, to budget accordingly for future years, and BC Transit to submit their budget request to the province. But if expansion dollars are not added to BC Transit's budget, then nothing happens. And what has happened in the past is often expansion dollars that are added do not equal what is being requested from all of the services across the province. And so then BC Transit does have a prioritization matrix that they go through, and then they can allot the funding that they do have. So we have been lucky in the last couple of years. 2 years ago, we got a bit of custom funding, and this past year, we got both custom and conventional funding. So this is just, again, the plan for the next 3 years. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for that. 2 years ago, I recall us not getting funding for our expansion on Route 90, but we did get it for 2025. Director Waite, you have some questions.
Yeah, just to expand on that a bit. Yeah, Chair, you nailed it by bringing up 2 years ago too, which is that, I mean, it's been going through my head too. Is like, should we ask for all of our needs for this year, or strategize more by considering the budget might be tighter this year? But actually, 2 years ago, they gave us part of our request, which was the HandyDart improvements. So that's still possible. We could end up in a position where they say, well, we've got limited funding, but and we see you've got these 3 or 4 different asks, which I think I totally agree with all those. I think that is in our plan that we've been working with BC Transit with, but we can maybe there could be a possibility where they might actually approve some of them, but not all of them, which is what happened 2 years ago. Just to help answer that question from Director Stanford.
Yeah, I think it's always a good idea when not everything's approved, we can ask for more than we need. Well,
we're not asking for all of it. Like, you see, there's a plan for three years here. I don't think we should ask for all of that, because then that what if we get approved? And then
I get it. Yeah. So I'm looking around, and is anyone else? Oh, there we go. Director Stanford, go ahead. Okay. put a pin in
Yeah,
that.
put a pin in
Director
Director
Gebb,
Stanford.
yes.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Chair, and could staff through you expand a little bit on what the 2026, 2027 increases to custom transit would look like? Is this plan gonna, is it kind of sketched out already? Like, because it says increase in service span on weekends and weekdays. Do we have an idea already of what that's gonna look like? Or is this something that will come later? Thanks.
Very good.
Thank you, Chair.
Go ahead, Jim.
Thanks for the question. So we are presently planning with BC Transit on what that would look like. So there will be, as that's finalized, there will definitely be some news releases and updates to everyone on what expansion looks like in terms of service hours. Thank you.
All right, Director Stanford, go right ahead.
I remember what my question was now. There are opportunities mentioned through the report about route changes. And I'm just being interested in how route changes are how we engage the community on route changes, because that could have quite a significant impact on specific neighborhoods if suddenly their bus route moves a few blocks in one direction or other. And so what is the engagement process for that kind of route adjustment?
Thank you, Chair. So the Transit Future Action Plan outlines the changes, which includes the connector Route 5. So it's not, we're not sitting back and creating a brand new route that hasn't already been considered. So as, if the funding is approved for the expansion, then we work with the BC Transit planners, which are, this is their baby. They could probably talk about transit planning forever. We take a look at the routes, the 1, the 90, the 5. If there are changes that we are anticipating would be in the best interest of improving service efficiencies, then there would be an engagement. We'd come out and we would be discussing those changes. At this point in time, it's preliminary because we haven't got that far, other than to go to the Transit Future Action Plan and to take a look at what the proposed changes are. That's where we'd be starting. Thank you.
I have a question about the route changes. So is there a point where public input is taken? Because there are people on the ground that have certain ideas about where buses should go and could go. And I wonder if Mr. Ringma or his coworkers would be interested in a public input.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for the question. I'll just start by saying this is not a wholesale change of our service routes. So that's a whole different undertaking. So this is the implementation of the Transit Future Action Plan, which has already sort of been at a high level outlined. So as we finalize those and get to more finite detail, then we would come out to the public and we would be looking for thoughts on what is being presented. But we have planners that are experts in that. They would at least give the framework to start with before we would come out to the public, because we don't want to create an expectation that we're doing a wholesale change of our routes, because that's very, very different and could be extremely costly. What we're trying to do is be as efficient and effective as possible. We have had some feedback presented to BC Transit already, and we've accepted that and have identified to those individuals that will be examining that feedback when and if we get the funding, when we go into that detailed planning. Thank you.
Thank you, Jim. If we get the funding, Director White.
So I think I've got a bit of a different tangent here, but totally related to our request. And it's because of a conversation I had earlier this week. It also connects to another motion that's on our agendas today. And that is that I spoke to the YMCA about childcare earlier this week. And the representative, the communications representative from the YMCA was very clear to me that their biggest need, what they're really looking for in terms of what maybe local governments could possibly support, well, housing's an obvious one, but beyond that, what they're hearing directly from their workers on is transit, is transportation, and specifically in West Sechelt. And because that's one of the programs that's had to shut down. And when it comes to retention of the current workers, when it comes to trying to attract other workers, they're not finding that, they're finding themselves in situations where they have to wait like an hour and a half for a bus after work. So I said, good news. Coming in our agenda, there is actually a proposal to increase frequency in West Sechelt. So I want to make sure staff knows that and the board knows that, and when it comes to our childcare crisis that we're all well aware of, and we took to the minister recently at UBCM, this is addressing the overall community need, which is more frequency in West Sechelt, and was recognized as also as helping to address this childcare issue too.
Thank you, Director White. I guess that's Route 2 that we're talking about. Okay, and so that's in this. And at one point, when we're given if we get a partial approval of these requests, is it up to, who makes the decision as to where those dollars would go? Is it a board decision or is it a BC Transit decision? If we get a certain amount of funding for the requests that we've made, do we get to decide that we're going to improve Route 2 because we feel that that's a...
You've asked the question, let her answer.
Okay, I've asked the question.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for the question. I'll start by reminding the board that transit is very interconnected. And so for us to begin to cherry pick can create some extreme challenges. So that's why we have BC Transit planners, is because this is their world. So they know if we impact one route by X, how it impacts the whole transit route. Because if you remember from some of our workshops, a bus may start in Gibson's and it might be part of Route 1, and it ends up in Half Moon Bay as part of Route 4, because we're very interconnected. So the recommendations in front of you have been based on data, real data, and our Transit Future Action Plan. And BC Transit would look at each of those and they would fund a particular one. And it would be the one that makes the most sense, that's sort of the top of the pile that needs to start the domino effect, if you may. Thank you.
Thank you for the answer. I'm looking around to see if anybody, Director Gabias, you have more questions?
No question. I would just like to move the recommendations. Now I can't find the page.
Page 269 and 270.
269 and 270.
We have a seconder on that, and I will look around to see if there's any more discussion on this motion. Seeing none, I'm going to call the question. All in favor? Any opposed? Director Lee's not in the service, so he doesn't vote. Very good. Thank you for your time. We're going to move on to our next item. The next item up for bids is...
Corporate work plan.
Is it? No, it's the universal water meter update. 4.3, page 280 on the agenda is the universal water meter installation program effectiveness update. On a personal note, I found a leak in my house and I was notified by it by the SCRD, and I dealt with it and it's taken care of. Thank you. So Manager Starsage and GM Rosenboom, you can go right ahead and introduce this.
Thank you, Chair. And thanks for fixing that leak. On behalf of the community. So the purpose of this report is to fulfill requirement direction from the board to provide an update on the effectiveness of the universal metering program to date. Staff did a data analysis from the data from last year, and the report provides some metrics on what the implications of those savings are. Thank you. And staff are here to answer any questions you might have.
Okay, so this report is for information. I'm looking for anybody on the board here who wants to pull more information out of this report. Do you have any questions? Oh, go ahead, Director McMahon.
Mostly comments. Love the data. This is really good. This is a good news story, which is nice before going into budget. And so we now have some numbers to show how much water we're saving. Do we understand the impact of that in the broader sense? Like, is that reducing our likelihood of running out of water? Is it compensating for the increased population, that our water usage is, our population is increasing, but the average water use is not? Like, is there a broad strokes description of our situation?
Thank you. Thank you for the question, through the chair. It's always a balance between supply and demand and weather. So yes, as the report indicated, this summer, the savings we were able to achieve over the last past year did extend our us being in stage 2 for a longer period of time. The overall, we anticipate that as part of this program and the subsequent implementation of volumetric billing, there will be a decrease in demand within the community of about 20% in the next 5 years. So some of the savings are already factored in our forecast in terms of supply and demand. However, I think what we're finding as staff is that the actual savings might actually be higher so far than we are expected. And a good example for that is, for example, based on the report, based on the data we had then had available, it indicates that for Sechelt, the larger meters could result in about 500 cubic meters per day savings. And based on our latest readings, that could actually be easily double, because there are several large leaks identified currently in Sechelt, and we're trying to, we followed up with the owners to address them. So, yeah, it is definitely benefiting our overall community, and yes, certain benefits were factored in and into our forecast that we are doing, but the savings are to date are really good. And in terms of the growth, it's far outpacing growth.
A follow-up? Go ahead.
Yes, if we're plugging all these leaks, does that help with our water pressure for fire flow?
No.
Good try. I'm going to go to Director Inkster.
Yeah, I too saw the information on the leak detection and fix that I hope follows soon after. And I think it was, I think we're communicating two things. One that's hard for people to grasp necessarily. It shows volume, swimming, pool, the pool analogy. But the actual numbers of units to me as a decision maker is helpful. More than the swimming pool. I guess it just sends the community a message that this is how much water we're saving. This many pools. Go look at the pool. But the units that we're saving is really good. And so when we're making decisions in Sechelt about development, although not when we approve them, sadly over the years, we don't see them necessarily being built upon approval. Hint, hint to those that are building those things. The thing I would ask through you, though, Chair, in saying that, because I love these statistics and I hope they continue to update them with leak detection and the numbers of units we're creating water for in our community, but also the resultant firefighting capabilities that we're making sure that we continue to meet, is the prediction of future savings in use. I wasn't clear what that meant. And I think that Mr. Rosenblum has alluded to it in his last couple of sentences. So in future, we're predicting more savings. Is that based on people then in the Sechelt area realizing that they're being charged for their water and they're going to consume less? So we're getting that sort of behavior change that we're looking for. Or will that be a combination of the continual discovery of leaks and the fixes that need to go with that? So it's, and if in fact we are correct in our speculative figures, will we then give the community an update on that in future as to how the overall program has saved a lot of water? Thanks.
All right.
Yeah.
Coordinator Starsage.
Through the chair. So there's at least three ways you could look at that. There's the first savings that you get when you've never had a metered community. So it's like the big savings for these leaks that are always ongoing. And then the meters just help to keep you at that level, right? Because new leaks will arise and they'll get fixed. But we have a first big chunk of savings that we can get from identifying these leaks that were never identified. And then there's the savings that you get because the data is shared with people. You can't manage what you don't measure. We want to empower the citizens to manage their own water use so they can sign up to receive their monthly water use update. They get an email from us every month. And when they do that, we've seen a reduction in use, right? That's just voluntary reduction. And then as we move towards the implementation of volumetric billing, which can have both that support fairness, but also incentivize efficiency, like technological adaptations and behavior changes, there's going to be another bump down in use. So those three different ways right away that we can see savings.
Thank you for the answer. Yeah, although we think it's an infinite resource, it comes out of the sky, it falls on us very heavily yesterday. It's a finite resource, and we do have to manage it well. And I'm really proud of the work that we've done to do this. I think it's a real feather in the cap of the regional district to implement this program. Director Inkster, you have some more to say.
Chair. Yeah, the work has been good. I'm hoping that when we create a system whereby we're communicating more with the public based on their own use, that we start to talk about conservation more with them, giving those helpful household hints that I hope we can attach to those, such as more ground watering and not as much air watering, to try to water more at times of the day and when there's not so much heat and there's so much evaporation and with climate change. So I hope we just start to talk about those things. I think we have enough water with what we're doing. We just have to be water smart. Thanks.
Director Gabias, go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. Very happy to see this report. I think we've been wanting to see this, to see the progress that's being made, and I'm so grateful to the community. I think this, like all these savings that happen because of the community, so good to see that the community is doing what they can. Small changes, big changes, leak resolutions. People are really doing the work, so I'm so grateful for that. We do have the power as residents, as users, to make a difference and to be part of the broader solution. So very happy to see those numbers. We are indeed all sharing a very precious resource. It is finite, and we need to use it very wisely. And also wanted to point out that the communications have been really good from staff. I know there's been a news release about these good news, so that's really nice to see. I think we need to show people and celebrate all these wins more, and then all the communication that's happened over the summer and the get ready for summer, the leak resolution letters. It's a lot of work. So, and I think it's showing its value in this report. So, yeah, thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Director Gabias. And we're going to go to Director McMahon, and then Director Toth.
We now have a whole huge amount of data that we never had before. So I love to geek out on data, and I would have so much fun with this. But I assume this will allow us to test out assumptions that we have about water usage, or even, for instance, to identify areas where we might want to prioritize the water mains for replacement. Or are there some unexpectedly interesting revelations that we hope to get out of this wealth of data that's being generated?
That's a big question. GM Rosenboom, I'm sure you have some good answers for that.
Thank you, Chair. I'll try. Data, the more data you have, the more you're attempted to analyze them, and then you're figuring out that, oh, I'm down a rabbit hole where I shouldn't go. And staff have already experienced that. We only have the data for Seychelles now for 1 month. So it's very preliminary. It was the month of September of this year. So what it really allows us is to get in a year from now to a place where we can use a year of data, to do analysis on in terms of leaks and compare it to Seychelles compared to more urbanized area compared to electro areas, and validate some of our assumptions in our forecast. But also having this year of data is actually essential for us to start thinking about the volumetric rate for the regional water system to be implemented in 2027. That's why we push so hard to get immediate data now, so that we have the year of data when we're doing those analysis in a year from now. And yes, we continue to investigate, besides these private side leaks, of course, also leaks in our own distribution system, and that work is also ongoing.
Thank you. It's important to see the seasonal changes within the system. Director Toth, go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. Not a question for staff, just a couple of sort of my own observations through this program, because I did just get my consumption letter from the regional district, and our household of 4-ish, people come and go. Like, we're only averaging 400 liters per day, and I'm actually not trying to conserve water right now, beyond the regular things that we do in the house. And so I think that's actually quite telling, and going to be quite telling for a lot of people to recognize. Like, when we post a number that says, oh, the average is 352 liters a day, and people lose their minds over it, they're going to be able to look at that and go, well, actually, I'm doing so much better than the average already. But one thing I did want to point out is that I'm just looking at attachment B on page 285, which shows sort of the total water savings in a chart. And if you consider really rough numbers here, Chair, Church Road Wellfield was a $10 million project, and water metering is a $10 million project. Based on the amount of water that's saved here, it's about a quarter of a Church Road Wellfield. And so that's a $2.5 million infrastructure investment that doesn't have to be made. And so right out of the gate, we're talking about a 25% return on the investment of installing water meters. Never mind the work that we can do with volumetric billing and the ongoing leak resolutions. And so I think that, you have to sort of work to tease those numbers out, but I think that's a really good news story, and I think people need to know that. Thank you.
Director Inkster.
Yeah, these are, as this board really has bitten into the water issues and tried to, make some progress, make some change. I want to ask about one of the issues that was kind of alluded to earlier, because it's another interest of mine, and that's fire flow. Do we know, is there any way we know from the leaks that we've fixed, determined in the Seychelles area and fixed, and I kind of know where the problem hydrants are, because I've kind of memorized where they are, because I worry about those areas in case there's a problem. Do we know, is there any way that we know where the leak fix has led to better flow? Or is it an infrastructure issue?
Go ahead, Jimmy.
Thank you. Fixing leaks is the only benefit of primary benefit of fixing leaks is that there is just less water being wasted. It does not immediately result in higher pressure at the hydrant. This is the usual size of a leak. This is the size of a hydrant. So when a hydrant is opened, that if that one leak in the area is fixed or not, it doesn't really make a difference. What we are doing is, because I heard fire flow coming up several times now, in November there will be a report, to the fire flow update report to the board with where we are right now. and some potential next steps. So there will be an update forthcoming on that one as well. Thank you.
All right, thank you. We've got still a bit of agenda to go through, so I was wondering if there's nothing else on this one, I'd like to move on. Is that okay? All right. Thank you very much for your time, staff. I'm going to go to item 4.4, which is the corporate work plan. So there's a lot to talk about on this one. I wonder if our Chief Administrative Officer would care to introduce this item?
Yeah, I think we're just available for questions, Chair. Thank you.
Very good. I saw a small mistake on page 307, where the first section of this report is the combined corporate work plan, which is all the different projects that are going on, and then it's broken down by department. And on page 307, my pet project, the Cliff Gilker Bridges and Trails Improvement, seems to have fallen completely off of the corporate work plan there, although it does appear in the combined report. I just wanted to point that out, that I have not forgotten about Cliff Gilker. My community has not forgotten about Cliff Gilker. I do have a question for the other directors, if anyone knows who Cliff Gilker was.
He was a director. He was an SCRD director.
Was he an
for your
SCRD
area.
director?
You should know.
Well, I saw that question on Facebook yesterday.
Yeah.
Are there any questions pertaining to the corporate work plan? Go ahead, Director McMahon.
Actually, what I'm looking at is using this to inform myself going forward in the budget process. I didn't really want to dive too deep into this at the moment, particularly in view of the fact that some of the same information is reflected in the quarterly reports that follow.
I do have one question, that there are a number of completed projects reflected in this quarterly corporate work plan report. Are they new to this quarter, the completion of those projects? Example, if we go to the report themselves, where are we? Sorry. So you have listed, projects listed in purple are now 100% complete. Now, were they 100% complete when we last saw this document?
Thank you, Chair. So this particular report has been updated up to the deadline of the publication for the agenda, so likely to the end of September. And I also have a question or an answer for your Cliff Gilker and reason why it's not showing up, because there might be some other projects that are similar to that. So if you're okay with that, Chair, I can answer. Sure. So the deferred projects, the ones that were deferred to 2026 were parked under a different component. So those are the ones we're going to be addressing at budget on the 27th. So the board made a decision on that one to move it into 2026 work plan.
Okay, thank you. So, example on page 290, line 2, exposed water main rehabilitation Chapman Lake, it's a 100% complete. Was that completion in the last quarter? Jim Rosenboom.
My apologies, can you repeat it?
So when I see in this quarter,
Yeah.
corporate work plan, there's line 2 on page 290 shows the exposed water main rehabilitation Chapman intake line project as a 100% complete.
Yes, that is, there was completed in Q3. No, they won't be removed because otherwise it's still an indication that it was part of the work plan this year and it has been completed.
Yes, having said I wasn't going to ask questions, I'm now going to ask a question. Bottom of page 287, 23% of projects are complete or substantially complete as of Q3. Is there a projection for where we'll be at the end of Q4?
I don't believe so. I think because our resourcing is variable right at the moment. That's maybe something we can circle back at pre-budget next week as to maybe do a little analysis between now and then, because that will be relevant.
All right, go ahead.
Yeah, I would be interested in knowing of the projects that are not complete, how many of them were never intended to be complete this year, right? That would make that statistic more meaningful.
That's something that you're going to take away and get back to us on. Thank you. Director White.
Thank you, Chair. I do have a question about the corporate work plan, but I want to make a comment about parks and regional parks too, because I think, and I'm sitting beside a director here who's got a long history of supporting parks and regional parks, and I think there are neighborhood parks for sure in municipalities and in rural areas that are more for those neighborhoods, but I think we should really take pride and broader ownership and promotion of some of our regional parks. And just in response to your comments, Chair, in that Cliff Gilker is a park that's enjoyed by people up and down the coast. And I don't think Roberts Creek needs to feel like this is our park and we're getting ganged up on, and this is my pet project. I think all of us want Cliff Gilker to be improved, and we should really acknowledge it as a regional park. And I'm saying this as somebody who's not even in the function, but you know, we've got Brothers Park that's used widely by sporting for sporting events for people up and down the coast, and otherwise. I think, you know, people even go and illegally walk their dogs there from from outside of the town. So I just want to really let's try to get off this. This is, and I know, you know, I want to acknowledge Director Lee's, not his parks, but his regional parks, because last time I visited Baker Beach, I recognized half the people there from my town in Gibson. So there's a lot of regional use of our parks, and I just want to get off the this is this area's park or that area's park, because there's definitely Cliff Gilker is a great example of a regional park that many residents up and down the coast enjoy. Now to the corporate work plan. I wanted to ask about some of the projects that are moving along really well under the red line, and if that's kind of a work in progress of the board trying to integrate the board's priorities, but into the projects that are over the red line, but also just the reality that some projects were already moving forward and maybe are under the red line, but they're going ahead anyway. Is that something that we need to tweak a bit, because it's the logic is a bit unclear, I think, when it's clear that things under the red line are still going ahead and happening. I think that's good. And I see some of these projects that they're probably happening because there's departmental resources for them and they've already started and they're getting done. But to me, that also just means, like, regardless of what our priorities might be, those should just be above the red line to be more accurate.
Yeah, that's an interesting question. Go ahead, CAO.
So I know this is a new tool, and it was acknowledged that it would be iterative. So when we adopted the plan in May, I believe it was, there was acknowledgement that there were items below the line that we were going to continue to work on for various reasons that were outlined in that particular report. So these are why you're seeing items below the line. because we acknowledged we're going to be out of lockstep between the above and the below until we calibrate. So those are those projects that are below the line. The ones that we didn't acknowledge that we're going to kind of be tools down are not moving forward and or have actually been moved and deferred into 2026. So there is a little bit of differences between the two, and hence probably why some of the items above the line are not moving as quickly as we'd hoped.
Thank you. Like with any new tool, is you've got a work-in period. Yeah, I get it. And I wanted to thank Director Way for his support of the regional park, which is in my area. Go ahead, Director Inkster.
Yeah, thanks, Chair Bax. Once again, though, it's a park for the whole Sunshine Coast, right? Macy's another one that's in one director's area, Director Stanford's, but it's another one that's huge use. So we just have to make sure we get these back online. Gilker, if we could maybe just get one bridge in, just get one, because people aren't using them because they can't cross. So it's a problem. And I will tell you that because that park's been offline for a while, that Kinnickinnick, one of our parks, if you look at our plans for that, is changing slightly. Kinnickinnick to reflect that Gilker's a little offline, so we're changing some of our uses and how we're doing things in Kinnickinnick because it's a very large park and it's got some water features because Gilker's offline. Because in Seashell, we're just, I push for a lot of park stuff as Director White has admitted. And so because Gilker's offline, we're pushing for some changes to, not expensive changes, to be honest. But they're good changes in Kinnickinnick. We're doing it with not a lot of money, just to reflect the Gilker's offline a little bit. Thanks, Chair.
Very good. Okay, so we're, Director Lee, go ahead.
Perhaps I wasn't paying quite enough attention, and I'm probably asking a redundant question, but I had notes here, and there's a huge number of projects that are green that are below the line. And I also noted that 9 projects below the line were completed versus 25 above the line, which is a pretty high percentage. So it seems like we must have quite a few staff working on things that we thought were below the line. I look at them and I'm really glad they're being worked, though, by the way. Some of them are mine. But how do we fix that going forward? Or do we rationalize it? Or how do we rationalize it, I guess, is...
I was gonna paraphrase what I heard from our CAO, is that there's growing pains with this tool, and that there were some pieces that were being worked on that were considered below the line because of how far they'd gotten. And so as we use this tool for a longer period of time, it's going to settle itself into a better position, and we'll see less and less projects below the line that are going to be getting completed, and more of the projects that are above the line having progress. Does that answer your question, Director Lee?
Kind of, except I noticed that some of my projects are stopped because there's not enough staff to work on them. And they're above the line. So I guess this is something that we'll have to talk about and try and...
We're going to be discussing it next week.
Let me figure it out so I understand, because I don't understand.
There'll be some talk about it in pre-budget next week. Absolutely. Go ahead, Director Stanford.
Just really quickly, a comment that how valuable this tool is, because it is giving us all that kind of information. We have a much better sense of the trends. And you pointed out that delay due to capacity is popping up on that far column a lot. And that's sort of building into how do we deal with that? Like, that gives us the information we need to look at staffing and how is it incorporated? How do we move forward? Just great to see how this document works. The colors help me a lot. it's given me a much better sense of where we're at with how we're working. So thank you.
Director Lee, go ahead.
Just a follow-up comment. I think that it shows it's working because I'm asking those questions. We now have those kinds of data and we understand, so.
Absolutely, it's
I'm
a great
actually
tool.
quite happy with the fact that we're having this tool and we're working on it.
Absolutely. CAO, go ahead.
Yeah, just very briefly, Chair. This is absolutely, the comments I think are helpful because it is important for the board to signal what the priorities are. And so we did do that sort of May and in the July area. But if there's further refinements to say what criteria for us to prioritize and how we do that with the resources is part of your next process, which is as you layer more on potentially for the budget process, because you have a lot that's still not completed, but you're somewhere in the midst of it. So we contemplated all of those concepts, but I know it's a lot of information. So we tried our best to try to use some criteria. If there's further criteria to prioritize, then that can be part of the iterative process.
Thank you. Yeah, it's a great tool, and I love using, like, the information that it gives us is very valuable, and you'll get feedback from us, absolutely. With no other comments on this item, I'm going to move on to our quarterly reports from our different departments then. We've got
Q3 financial variance, 4.5.
Oh, 4.5, the corporate financial variance report, which is Manager Wing, is in front of us. Go ahead, Manager Wing.
And just before Manager Wing takes off, I'm going to grab a point of order, if you will. Given the time,
yes,
I would encourage directors to keep their remarks brief for the remainder of the items on our agenda. Thanks.
I second that motion.
It's not a motion.
I know, I'm just kidding. Go ahead, Director Wing.
Thank you, Chair. So on that vein, I will be brief in introducing this report. I will just highlight the overall variance. I'd like to highlight the overall variance surplus, which is just under $5 million at $4.95 million. Compared to last year at the same period, the surplus, overall corporate surplus was $3.6 million. So that's quite a significant jump. What's driving that is two factors. There's wages, which are $2.33 million surplus in wages. That's almost $1 million higher than the same period last year. And then net operating base budget, which is kind of the day-to-day operating expenses that we see. That's at a $1.97 million surplus, which is about $660,000 higher than the same period last year. The one thing I'll point out with the net operating base budget, I looked at, didn't get into the budget details too much, but the budget increased by just under $1 million from 2024 to 2025 in terms of the net operating budget. So it's a combination of the budget going up, spending's also gone up, but it's different factors involved there. It's not just less spending, it's also the budget going up that's driving some of that surplus as well. Overall, from a service basis, there are no significant concerns. We are monitoring the transit service closely. That has moved into a surplus position. It was a deficit at Q2, but there's some seasonality there with Q4, so we'll keep a close eye on that going into year end. And then the fire services are also still in a surplus position, but there are some pending purchases for Q4 that will impact those, and it is likely that one or possibly two of those services could potentially be in deficit at year end. So I will leave it at that and take any questions.
Thank you, Manager Wing. I'm going to look to my directors to see if they have any questions about this. None? Really? All right, well, there's a lot of great information in here, and we will be studying this and going into budget next week, into pre-budget. So if there's no other questions on 4.5, I will move to 4.6, which is the Q3 report for Community Services Department. 4.6, 4.7, 4.8, 4.9 are all department quarterly reports. If anyone has any questions on the first item, go ahead, Director McMahon.
Sorry, I got lost trying to scroll through all of this. I did have several questions. It's a little frustrating having questioning cut short when here we have these quarterly reports to inform us. I just had a couple of questions about parks and trails. On page 427, there was an example of a possible program called Adopt a Trail. And I was wondering if that had ever been tried. And now, of course, it doesn't seem to be 427 on this one. Oh, yeah, no, Adopt a Trail. There it is. I saw it. All right. And on 429, there is a mention that community park improvement project requests, 2 of them have been or are about to be approved, and I wanted to know what kind of projects have gotten approved.
Jim Gagnon, I believe you have answers for this.
Thank you, Chair. So I'll start with the first question, which is around the volunteer program. So we are actively working on that, and we have had some volunteer examples. I think the Mon Trail and some of the work that went on there is a good example of that. But we haven't initiated a full-scale adopt a trail or adopt a park at this point in time, to my understanding. Your second question was around community-led initiatives, and I'll just take the opportunity to remind everybody what that is, so that because there's a difference. There's a difference between the community coming to us with an idea that they want to fund and that they want to initiate and just need our approval, versus an idea that they have that they'd like us to fund and they'd like us to initiate. So the CLIP is community-led. So the 2 applications that we received and have supported this year, one is up in, actually they're both up in the Ranger Station in Area A, and it was the music school. The board approved last year a change to a heat pump, and this year they came and asked to actually put in an HRV, which is just to enhance its efficiency, and so that one was approved. And we're actively working on the second one, which is the group there wants to enhance their signage on site. So we're working with them to, and we'll be bringing a report forward. I think it's anticipated in December for board consideration. Thank you.
All right, well, that's good news for Director Lee's area. Other question? Go ahead. Director Stanford.
I'm going to talk about ports. So I'm looking at sort of the strategies, the timeline, the progress for ports, and it's on page 52 of the report in eScribe. And then I'm comparing it to the information received in the corporate work plan. I am really concerned about how we manage what is considered maintenance on the ports against potential service failure. And that's happened through West Bay Dock. So I'm not sure if what I'm looking at is simple maintenance, or actually would, if we don't do it sooner rather than later, it's going to cause some of these facilities not to be usable. And one of the ones that I'm focusing on is Halkett Bay, or colloquially called FERCM, given that that is the only access to a whole community. So I'm not sure how this moves forward, but how to reconcile the concerns expressed in the corporate work plan versus the progress report in ports and docks in the community services report for Q3. So I'm just looking for a way forward to how we ensure that these facilities can be fixed, or at least maintained to the point where we're not having structural failures, which has happened recently. On the other side, I'd also really like to thank port staff for stepping up and responding to a lot of community input over the last couple of weeks, and making some changes to the plan on how they're going to support a fix for, at least a temporary fix for West Bay Dock. So I wanted to add that in as well. Thank you.
So are we looking to staff to try to explain what can we do to help? Can we put a pin in it? I know there's ports is a big issue. You go ahead, General
Thank you,
Manager.
Chair. I'll do my best. So we do have a finite budget for repairs and maintenance that we use every year to its limit. I think it was 2 years ago now, there was a budget lift approved for 4, maybe 5 consecutive years. So each year we're getting a little bit more, which is great. So next year we'll get a little bit more. And we use that money to address what we call minor repairs and maintenance, which is done through our contractor. When we do our major inspections, which were done in 2022, it identifies more structural concerns. And so we have those projects on the corporate work plan. So there are, in addition to Keats and Hopkins, there are 4 other docks, including Halkett, that have been identified for some structural improvements. So based on capacity with our resignation of staff and new staff that came on, we had to choose which ones we could move forward with. And so Keats and Hopkins received the priority at that point in time. And so the other 4 docks are on our 2026 work plan. And that's, I believe, reflected in the corporate work plan as well. So, but I hear the concern. We have docks that haven't had significant investment over many, many years. And so we are playing a bit of a catch-up game. So we will be addressing the priority repairs as per the engineering structural assessments that were done in 2026 in order of what was identified as sort of priority first, which I believe is Eastbourne, is one of the key priority docks for 2026. And then with all of our repairs and maintenance, we address the items that are brought up in the biannual inspections, plus emerging items that happen through storm or through ferry wakes or whatever else is occurring to have something emerge that's not foreseen. Thank you.
All right, thank you for the answer. I'm going to go to Director Lee. Go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. I couldn't resist the opportunity to comment on the work that's being done at the music school on the ranger station. It's our music school puts on a lot of performances, and they're very well attended by everybody on the coast, may I say. Yeah, and it's great that they do that. But what I wanted to mention was that it's a low cost to us as a regional district. There's an agreement where the music school actually looks after the interior and the RD looks after the exterior, which keeps the cost down for everybody because they are part of the parks function. And that particular model is something I think we should be striving for all of our community halls and community structures. So I just wanted to put that out there.
Thank you, Director Lee. Yeah, I think the community-led initiative projects or infrastructure projects, or what's the I stand for again? Anyway, I think we need to reach out to our community members and let them know that this exists, because I don't think a lot of them really actually know that it does exist. And I think it's definitely a way that we can engage, have ownership from our community, and save us money, all of us. Director McMahon.
Yes, just a general parks question. So every time I drive through Gibson's lately, I see wrecking crews of crows tearing up lawns. And it's all over Facebook too, people bewailing the fate of their lawns. How are our parks doing?
We got grubs in our parks?
Apologies, that's not a question I can answer. I'd have to reach out to operations. Thank you.
Thank you, anyway. So where are we in the agenda? Have we moved on past 4.6? Are we 4.
If you don't have any more questions, let's
If I don't have, oh. All right, well, Vice Chair, do you know where we are?
You're moving on to 4.7.
4.7, Planning and Development Department Q3. Going once, going twice. Make it easy for Jim. Oh, GM Hall. Director Lee.
Sorry, were you looking for a question?
Well, not
Is it
really.
time?
It is after 12 now, and we still have a little
So
bit
I
of
shall ask
agenda.
my question.
Go ahead.
I was quite happy to see KPIs for a lot of the functions, but I was looking for a KPI to see how we're doing with the various applications as opposed to from when they were applied for and when we're delivering on them. I couldn't see it in there. I don't know if I did see an excellent one for the building department and how long it's been taking to issue building permits, but I didn't see one for for instance, for pre-applications or development variance permits or those kind of things.
This is a direct question for General Manager Hall. Do you understand the question? Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. The difference in how things are reported is partially a difference between the Tempest software that underpins the operations of these two divisions. So through the DAPR project, Development Approvals Process Review, that led to a bunch of recommendations, Tempest redeployment in planning is on the 2026 work plan, and a global update on the progress on DAPR is coming later this quarter for staff. The one thing I wanted to add is through the monthly development approvals tracking report that's included on the planning website, there is it's not automated, so it doesn't have the sophistication of the way that the building permit data is presented here, but it is possible to see processing times for those approved applications. Thank you.
Oh, go ahead, Director Lee.
Yes, that was the next one. I'd actually printed that report and noticed it was online, and it was an excellent report. I think we're making good progress. It'd be nice to have it in real time eventually, but it is a good report.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Any other takers on this one? No? Okay, I'm going to move on to Protective Services, Emergency and Protective Services. Page 492. I don't see our acting senior manager here. Are there any questions about this quarterly report? I don't see any, so I'm going to move on to Infrastructure Services, 4.9, page 509. Go ahead, Director McMahon.
Yes, Wood Creek Park on page 518. I believe the latest RFP closed on October the 2nd, and we are all eager to know if any compliant bids were received.
Very good. GM Rosenboom.
Thank you for the question. Unfortunately not. So we're back to the drawing board. We have identified some options to redefine the scope to still get the same outcome and to stay within budget. So we're advancing that at this point in time and hope to get it out for tender soon again.
Dang. Any other, Director Lee, you want to wade in here?
Thank you. I went through all of the work to check all this out, so I'm going to ask the questions. I'm looking at page 519, and it's the water and wastewater service reviews. And there's a thing called SCR development referrals related to water. And I was curious just exactly what those are. I could imagine what they are, but I think I might have it wrong.
Go ahead, GM Rosenboom.
Thank you. In a future report, we might want to include a definition of what is actually listed there. So every development that's happening within an SRD water system is being referred to us to confirm if there is sufficient fire flow, if there is a service connection that needs to be established. So these are the referrals that we're doing to confirm if the servicing requirements from a utility perspective for the lots.
All right, thank you. So there's more to come. Did you have something else, Director Lee? If not, go ahead then.
There is an update on page 517 on the fire flow action plan development. By the way, I like these write-ups, but they're very great, very good. But this seems to indicate that we got phase 2 to go through before we will get any recommendations on how to resolve our fire flow conundrum. Is there just a quick update on if I've got that right, or if there's something might happen before that?
Go ahead.
Thank you for the question. A quick update will be always a long one in terms of fire flow. So on November 13, we will provide an extensive update to the board with an answer to the good answer to the question. If that's
Sounds like
sufficient
November
for the board.
13th is going to be your red letter day for that one, okay?
Thank you, Chair.
All right, you're done? Very good. So we're done the quarterly reports. We're going to move on to our correspondence. We have a letter, correspondence from the president of the Sunshine Coast Farmers Institute. Now, I understand that there is an ask here, and I'm going to turn to, should I turn to you? I'm going to turn to Director McMahon for some insight into this particular item. Thank you.
Right. The Farmers Institute took the initiative to try and help us with some problem solving around policy, around food growing for commercial farms. And we need to find a way forward. So I was going to make the following motion. Move that staff, in collaboration with the Sunshine Coast Farmers Institute, draft an amended budget proposal for commercial food growing farm policy development, including options for project delivery and the envisioned partnership with member municipalities.
Very good. So that's a motion. Looking for a seconder on that? We have a seconder. We have discussion on this motion now. I'd like to say that there was a certain amount of money that was put aside for a project that this may fit the bill. 10 years ago, there was money put aside, $85,000 that could be used for this. Now, this is something that I'm hoping that staff is aware of and can look at using that money to address this motion. Any discussion on the motion? Go ahead, Director White.
Yeah, the last two words jump out at me, obviously. The member municipalities part, and I just want to, I know this discussion has taken place outside the board table too, just about the fact that, as we know very well right now at the town of Gibson's, because we're reviewing every property in our zoning bylaw and OCP, we have 3 agricultural properties. So what's the kind of, I mean, with the emphasis on member municipalities in this motion, what's the kind of expectation of municipal collaboration? Because I don't know if we've got a lot to bring forward with our three.
I think Director McMahon can answer that
Well,
question.
I could possibly say that member municipalities within the SCRD water service, if that was helpful, because I'm not sure that you have any commercial food growing farms. You may have some ALR properties, but
Maybe one.
one, okay.
I'm gonna,
That's would that amendment address the issue?
I'm not speaking against the motion. I just wanted to have a better understanding of what it would look like. I mean, I know the one farm has talked to me in the past about the like kind of challenges of like the Gibson's water regulations. They don't have a straightforward way to dig a well because they're on Gibson's water. So they've asked things like, oh, could we dig a well? Could our neighboring property on the SCRD dig a well, and then we provide water? So there is like for the one farm there is some interest, but I just wanted to understand better what this would look like, because I mean, if this like involves a lot of committee meetings or something of our staff, it might not make a lot of sense when we're only talking about one property.
Without getting too far into, I think answering the specific questions, I think the crux of it is we do need to define the scope. The scope in front of you here as part of this proposal is not just included about water purveyance and rates, it's about land use designation. And the proposal from the Farmers Institute goes beyond the regional district boundaries. And so I did forward this particular proposal to the other CAOs. And so I've asked for their feedback. I haven't heard from everyone, but I think that's part of the contemplation and in working with the Farmers Institute as to what could the scope be and what would be considered as far as like that regional land use plan, knowing everybody's doing their OCPs. So it goes beyond the water purveyance.
So do we need to amend this motion, or do we need to table this motion? Okay. We have a motion on the floor. Are there other discussions about the motion? All right, I will call the question. All in favor? Very good. Any opposed? Okay, that passes. We have one more piece on the agenda, which is a request for a letter of support from Huesum Roberts Creek Community Association. Is it customary for us to vote on this as a board?
Yeah, make a motion.
I move that we write a letter of support for the Huesum Roberts Creek Community Association for their application for the gaming grant that they want to apply for. Do I see a seconder for that motion? I see a seconder. Do I see any questions on this? No? Okay, I'm going to call the question. All in favor? Very good. That passes unanimously. Thank you very much. We are at the end of our agenda. We've done our communications. We have no new business. We have no in-camera. So I'm going to look for
Motion to adjourn.
motion to adjourn. Thank you. And that's seconded. All in favor? Very good. Now we have, do we have anybody online that wishes to speak? I'm going to look to our recording secretary and see if there's anybody.
Heart and Soul is online, but that's.
Does Heart and Soul wish to speak? No hands up, then we're not going to go there. I'm going to call this meeting adjourned and say thank you very much, and I'll see you in an hour, 45 minutes, right back here.